or not. So
Oh, it says it's being live streamed.
Yeah. But I never can tell. Like, it says live stream here, but on Facebook, it's buffering. And I don't really want to start until I know for sure that it's actually, because I was like, I mean, I'm not like a super techie guy. So I always wait until I can actually see it on Facebook. And I'm like, okay, I've now confirmed that it's live. I'm the guy that misses fish because I'm like, was that a bite? I don't know if that was a bite or not. I don't think it was a bite.
You don't want to pull too soon, huh?
Yeah, you don't want to pull too soon. That could be devastating. So we are definitely live, though. So for everybody now knows that I'm not that great of a fisherman. But that's okay, because that's why they make Long John Silvers and supermarkets and Red Lobsters and everything else. So, hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. It's Monday. It's July 5th. Happy late birthday to America. Hopefully everybody that's watching still has 10 fingers. I read a funny thing on Facebook yesterday that just said, for someone somewhere in America, today will be the last day they wake up with 10 fingers. And I know that that's a little bit dark, but I still laugh really loud because I know that it's true. Hopefully that's none of you fine folks. So it's a holiday today by observation, whatever that means. I guess that means that people aren't working and the banks are closed and that kind of stuff. But if you're choosing to join us, thank you. I know that you could be doing lots of other things, especially doing things like barbecues and everything else, watching the Patriot, those type of things tonight. So we're glad that you're here joining us. I think you're going to be glad that you joined us too. So this is Parents Helping Parents live stream. For people who aren't familiar with Parents Helping Parents, we're an Oklahoma-based 501c3 nonprofit organization founded by parents, primarily run by parents, with the mission of providing education, resources, and shared experiences to parents who have children any age who might be struggling with substance use disorders. So some of the parents that we support maybe have 15, 16-year-olds, high school students who are just kind of on the beginning stages of starting to experiment with drugs and alcohol, and they're not sure what to do with that. And some parents that we support are all the way up to maybe having adult children, even 40, 50-year-old children who are continuing to remain active in their addiction, and they're still trying to provide whatever support they can, even at that age. So, and we service parents all in between. We're not a professional organization. In fact, we have no professional expertise at all. As an organization, we don't provide legal advice, medical advice, professional counseling. All of those are great things. We think you should get those if you need them. But our organization is geared toward helping connect you to those resources, helping provide you with education about addiction-related issues and family-related issues, and then sharing our experiences, things we've learned along the way, trying to support loved ones, maybe some things that we tripped over in the past that we don't want other parents and family members to trip over as well. So I want to direct you to a couple of places, especially if you're joining us for the first time. Maybe you're seeing this on YouTube. Maybe you're seeing this because somebody shared the video. If you are, go to our Parents Helping Parents Facebook page. It's at Parents Helping Parents, Inc. You can follow us there for content like this twice a month. You can follow us there for other information and other things that might be going on, events and those type of things that Parents Helping Parents are doing. You can also visit our website, www.parentshelpingparents.info. Right? That's where you can find all the other information web-based as well. So Parents Helping Parents has local chapters: Oklahoma City, Edmond, Norman, Tulsa, Wichita. Somebody's going to email me because I forgot about them, and I'm sorry, but we have local chapters kind of spread across Oklahoma. We love that you can watch these live streams and be a part of this. Our local chapters are slowly over this summer beginning to meet again. There is absolutely no substitute for being in a room full of people who care about you and want to give you support. So continue to watch the live streams, but if you're close to a local chapter and you've got the ability to do so, get connected there. It can be a valuable tool to helping your family navigate all the question marks of supporting a loved one who's struggling with drug and alcohol use, okay? If you're in a place that doesn't have a local chapter, we would love to plant chapters all over the world and beyond. Why stop at the world, right? Let's talk about universal domination of parent support. If you're anywhere and you want to plant a chapter or you want more information about what that might even look like, hey, get on our website, get on our Facebook page, send us a message, let us know. We'd love to talk about that. So thanks for being here. I'm going to be quiet now. You guys aren't here to listen to me. You're here to listen to all of the fabulous guest speakers that we have coming in. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh. I'm going to let him introduce himself, kind of talk about his story, and we will go from there. So Josh, the floor is all yours, brother.
Awesome. Thanks, Derek. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So, hey, everybody. My name is Josh Jordan. My sobriety date is July 12th of 2014. I'm an Oklahoma native. I was born and grew up in Oklahoma, Tulsa specifically. We were just talking before we started this about that. I still have my 918 cell phone number, even though in 2014 I came down to Texas to go to treatment for this last time, and I've stayed down here since just to kind of start things over. Anyways, Derek, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. I hope that something I say is helpful for somebody, or at least gives them a little bit of hope, because I know for me, and I know definitely for my family, having gotten to talk like in hindsight about, the effects that all the chaos that we went through had on everybody and their own relationships, with their spouses and all that stuff. Like in hindsight, I can't believe we are where we are today. So I'll dig into that a little bit, and I don't want to take too long, because to be frank with you, what's happened since July 12th, 2014 is far more interesting than what happened for the years leading up to that date. So like I said, born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was adopted. I was adopted by a couple that my mom and dad, who got a divorce a little while after they adopted me, and then they both remarried. And anyways, like I had a childhood where I didn't need anything. I didn't have any wants. Like everything that I asked for, I got essentially. It wasn't necessarily lavish, but looking back, like there was never a point in time where I thought like, oh, we're without anything. So all of that was good and fine. And for the longest time, like the whole adoption and everything else, like it didn't come up as problematic for me. I had some struggles in school when I was really young, kind of hyperactivity and impulse control problems, and bouts of rage and whatever else. Years later, I would find out that all of the kind of circumstances and things that happened to me weren't necessarily indicators that I was going to have alcoholism or addiction. And and I forgot to mention, I'm a recovered drug addict. I identify as an alcoholic only because of what I know the illness of alcoholism to be. And I'm in a fellowship that has a very specific definition of that, right? Like there's a world out there of problematic drug and alcohol use, and there are doctors and there are clinicians and there are communities of people that have problems with substance use, and they may call it addiction and they may call it alcoholism, and it's all true and good. And for the community that I'm a part of, we're very specific about what that illness looks like. And by the time I was able to determine that I had that, all of the circumstances of my childhood and life and traumas and mood disorders and everything else, it was something other than my substance use problems. And so one had to be treated in order for the other to be treated, sort of deal. So anyways, getting up into like high school times, whenever I started experimenting with alcohol and whatever, my introduction to alcohol happened when I was probably 14 on Grand Lake on July 4th. Coincidentally enough, it's July 5th. So anyways, and there wasn't really anything magical about it. I mean, as is the case with most teenagers, like using whether it's weed or alcohol or party drugs or whatever, like maybe the first few times it's about just testing the waters. But I think for a lot of kids, especially in today's culture, the culture that I was in when I was 14, we drank to get drunk. And like I said, like that's that's not necessarily an indication of what was to come at all. It's just what happened. It was just all the ingredients were there for me to want to get drunk. I'm not one to believe in a genetic predisposition. I mean, if it exists, I think it exists. I think it's been proven that it exists. But by the time we get to, treatment of alcoholism, it's kind of less important. So anyways, I get drunk, 14, July 4th, Grand Lake. I had a great time. Honestly, it was a really fun time. And then I spent the next few years like occasionally playing with marijuana and other kind of, or not other hallucinogens, but hallucinogens and whatever else, and drinking when it was around. And as soon as I could drive, really, what happened for me was my grandmother passed away, and for me it was a traumatic experience. The circumstances of her passing and my connection with her, like my unconscious kind of connection with her and how I regarded her, I became a non-believer. I believe that God could not exist if something like this could happen to a woman like that. And it was like an instant, a moment where she had a stroke and she was in like an assisted living type setting. And my dad, my stepmom, and I were showing up to visit her. And I knew that she was in a pretty bad state, but we were doing as best we could to go spend time with her. And when we got there, it was kind of a crisis situation that we didn't know was happening. And I, I'm kind of a teenager and don't really know how to process what's going on. And everybody else involved is doing the best they can. But what ends up happening is I'm standing right outside the door of her room, listening to her plead with God to end her pain and suffering. And I just couldn't reconcile that. Like, that was not acceptable for me. And I fell to the floor and I held my face in my hands and I thought, God cannot exist, for the first time ever. And then the only thing I was interested in was almost this like nihilistic approach to life, but not in the sense of like, fulfillment or participation in life, but in like a very destructive way. And I think what happened is, as a result of like self-medication, I developed what I would then call an allergic reaction to alcohol and drugs. Like I found out in this time going to treatment that, if you give any human body heroin every day for 30 days, that body is addicted to heroin, right? But there is a portion of the population that once they go through the detox and the withdrawals and everything else, they'll try and volunteer to, be injected with heroin for another 30 days for this experiment or whatever. And so there was a differentiation of, my body addicted to drugs versus me with the illness of addiction. And so anyways, somehow, for some reason, that developed. And my first time in treatment was right after I dropped out of the University of Oklahoma. I moved out of my parents because they said, you either stop smoking weed or you leave. And I said, I'm out. And I spent probably about a year just doing anything and everything I could. And hanging out with people that I never thought I'd hang out with, and just being in environments that were kind of scary to me, and acting like somebody I wasn't in order to get what I needed at the time. And anyways, by the time I went to treatment in Cushing, Oklahoma, I went to Valley Hope. And while I was there, somebody introduced this idea that maybe I should try praying. And like I said, I had this experience. I didn't believe God existed, but with kind of my upbringing, the circumstances that I was living in, like, weren't really acceptable. So like, I was pretty willing to do anything to kind of change the circumstances of my living situation and my drug use and all that stuff. So I showed up to Valley Hope, like, very interested in changing, very, very interested in changing. The only problem was that I had a brain full of ideas on what that change needed to look like. And so it wasn't even about like what that treatment facility offered me, right? Like I was unable to hear it. Like I was not placed in a position where I was desperate enough to set aside any ideas that I had. Like, I was like, oh, prayer, God, I know what that looks like, right? Going to church for an hour a week and doing nice things and putting a smile on my face, even though I'm not happy. That's what I thought like accepting God was about, right? Instead of stopping and asking people who were demonstrating a degree of freedom and usefulness and whatever. I just ran with the ideas I walked into treatment with. And anyways, needless to say, it didn't work out. I got out, overdosed for the first time, and went to sober living. Got kicked out because, overdosing while you're in sober living is a bad deal. And kind of just bounced in and out of treatment centers, in and out of sober livings, in and out of hospital beds for a while until and just exhausted the energy of my family, right? And I didn't know this. I went to a place called Burning Tree in 2014. And I was telling Derek before we started, but I do want to kind of plug them because, I mean, truthfully, for me, a miracle happened there. And I'm a big supporter of that place, though it's not the most affordable option for treatment. As far as I'm concerned, it's one of the best places in the country. Maybe the world. I don't know treatment on a global level. So anyways, I don't know what I was bringing up Burning Tree for. So let me just back up a little bit. Oh, yeah. So they do what's called a PAI, post-admission intervention. They bring the family in, probably, I want to say like a month into treatment, right? Like the fog has kind of settled, clear-headed a little bit, like can actually participate. And that's the other thing, like long-term treatment, in my opinion, based on my experience, should be considered in every situation, right? Especially for people who have been to treatment centers before. I'm not saying 30 days can't work, but long-term treatment, I think in order for somebody to have their head cleared and be able to participate in what's going on, it's important to consider it at least. So anyways, family shows up and I'm introduced to this idea that because I was so caught up in myself and everything that I could get from anybody around me, that I never stopped to consider, right? I've got 2 little sisters, an older brother, stepmom, dad, mom, stepdad, all these people that, I'm trying to avoid out of shame. Like I look like a junkie. I'm broke. I'm, hiding track marks under long sleeve shirts in the middle of summer in Oklahoma, and everyone knows what's going on. And I know that, and I can't possibly face them while they know that. So anyways, they all come out and I'm sitting, almost 30 days into treatment, and they have an opportunity to kind of tell me what my using career has done to their relationships. And it turns out like I have the energy that I robbed from my parents could have been given to my siblings, right? And how counterintuitive would it have been for them to stop and be like, okay, yes, Josh is having this life-threatening deal going on, and like we have to help him, but the other kids are having school stuff and appointments and extracurricular, like they have stuff that needs attending to, right? Because they're also children and they're also a part of a family. But anyways, like I stole all the thunder, right? I stole all the attention, and it never once crossed my mind, right? I'm not hurting anybody. If you would just leave me alone, we would all be doing really well, just keep the electricity in my apartment on and everything's fine, anyways, so Burning Tree has them come out. We sit down, we have this conversation, and like finally I'm taking a good hard look at what my behavior is doing to my family. And it was pretty jarring for me. And anyways, so while I'm there, I'm introduced to 12-step recovery. And it's not the first time, but it's the first time where it was like, hey, instead of applying all the ideas you already have about what that looks like, why don't you just stop and listen? Because every idea you've ever come up with or walked into this with has landed you here asking for help, saying you don't know which way is up. So why don't you just be quiet for just a moment and ask some people for help. And so I get a sponsor, and I'm walking through the work, and he's reading this book to me, and we're actually doing work, right? Not just like sitting in a meeting as many hours a week as we can, drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes or vaping and talking about what's going on in my day. Like, turns out 12-step recovery is about working the 12 steps. And like meeting attendance is important, and like being a part of a community is important. But for me and for people like me, that will not be enough, right? So anyways, I had a radical experience while I was there, and I got out, and like life changed for me. Life started for me. I didn't get anything back, right? Everything that I got was new. We walked through this kind of family programming, and it was powerful for all of us. And then like throughout the amends process, like going to my parents and going to my siblings, and the development of relationships that we didn't know we could have, right? I remember sitting down with my dad and trying to do my best to take ownership of some stuff, while not just, flaring up all the traumas that I may have put him through, but like letting him know I'm willing to discuss whatever it is we need to. And then him ending that conversation with, I guess it's time for both of us to ask God what it looks like for us to be a father and son to one another. And if that's not an indication of what the 9th step is about, then I don't know what is. And, here's this, my dad saying that. So anyways, like that's literally what happened. I started making phone calls that weren't about, hey, I need help paying for this, or, what should I do? I didn't call asking for advice every, other hour of the day, or money every other hour of the day. Honestly, my mom was put in a position. Well, they all were put in a position at the end of my burning tree experience when I was asked to leave because of some selfish behavior. I ended up homeless in Dallas with a year sober because of this long-term treatment program, $7 cash in my pocket, and I didn't know what to do. And the first person I called was my mom. And fortunately, Burning Tree had gotten a hold of her and said, hey, if he's going to be successful, you cannot rescue him. Like, the resources exist, and he gets to be uncomfortable, and he gets to have consequences for his actions. And now it has nothing to do with drugs and alcohol. And I called her. She said, if you call me and you ask for money, I won't be able to answer this phone again. I love you so much, and good luck. And they were right. And it was allegedly the hardest thing she's ever said to me. And it's the most rewarding thing that has ever happened in my entire life. So anyways, fast forward to 2017, like I've been super active in the recovery community, and I'm approached by some guys who want to open a sober living program, and we do, and we start Cardinal House Sober Living for Men. And we've been open since 2017, and we've gotten to work with a lot of guys, all age ranges, demographics, whatever. And like, we're a 90-day sober living, 12-step based, pretty high accountability, pretty low cost. And being in that, like, I've done a lot of the admission side of things, and kind of working with families when their loved ones coming to us. And I've gotten to have a lot of conversations where I use that story about what my mom said. And because it kind of put me in a position to stop acting as if I had a safety net underneath me, and like take a good, honest look at, like, can I count on my own thinking to get me out of this mess, even when drugs and alcohol aren't concerned, right? And as a result of me being put in a position where I didn't have a safety net, I was willing to grab onto anything that anybody said, and my whole life turned around. And so I get to use that story a lot when I'm talking to families. But truthfully, it's really easy as like a treatment professional, or whatever you want to call me, or anybody else that has similar conversations, like, hey, if your son's going to be successful, like, first of all, his only consequence for using and drinking can't just be you complaining about it, right? Because then all he has to do is not let you find out, or, convince you that it's okay. Like, if you're the only problem, then it's not really a problem, right? But then secondly, if he's in a position where he wants change, let's try something completely new, right? If we've been in the treatment cycle and we're doing all that. And I realized that, like, I'm asking parents to do something like incredibly counterintuitive, and it's so easy to spit out. sometimes without consideration of like what that looks like in a practical sense. I mean, especially with what's happening with opiates and, you know, the propensity of overdose, and like, it's a terrifying proposition, right? Hey, trust that like there is something out there that wants your son to get well, and not just abstinent from drugs and alcohol, but wants him to thrive and find fulfillment and freedom and abundance and all this stuff. But the only thing standing in the way is his lack of willingness. And a lot of times I'll say the sentence like, a hungry dog will eat. And I get how callous that may sound, but like, based on my personal experience and getting to work with as many guys as I have, it's the truth. And then more recently, I've gotten to work with an inpatient treatment facility called Brazos Recovery. And we're also a men's facility off of Lake Whitney, a little south of Fort Worth. And we're a long-term treatment program, 12-step immersion. And we're having a lot of the same conversations, right? Like, we are, for a lot of people, the absolute last house on the block. Like the guy for his first time in treatment, can we meet him where he's at and like show him what needs to be done? Absolutely. But for the guy that everywhere else is given up on, like, he can have an experience at Brazos. And I know that also because I've watched it happen. Like, my introduction to kind of the Brazos community was getting to sponsor the alumni that were coming out of there, some of them, and getting to watch these guys get out of there and infect recovery communities wherever they went back to, right? Dallas, Austin, Kerrville, Houston, wherever they ended up, it was like a infection, you know, of a solution, right? Like, they get in there and they're like, the cool thing about Brazos is, by the time guys get out, if they're able to stay as long as we're asking them to, not only are they going through some real and actual work and like finding out what self-sufficiency can look like when they get out, they're turning around and mentoring the guys walking in, and they actually like know what it feels like and looks like to be useful and helpful to somebody else. And so they start to already have that kind of practical application of what we're saying to go do when you get out of here. And like I said earlier, it's about a little more than just going to 90 meetings in 90 days. Like, I love that. I think everybody ought to consider doing it when they get out of treatment. But we can't not tell them why, right? So anyways, I know that there's a Q&A portion of this, and I spent a few minutes, and hopefully I covered everything, but I'll shut up now.
Yeah, I think that, thank you, man, just for sharing your story, and just a little bit about who you are and where you're coming from. I know that most of our people that listen love the recovery stories, right? Primarily because they love hearing that there's a solution, and that there's some hope for their loved one who might be in some of those dark places as well. So thank you for that. For the people that might be listening, and then Josh, just so that you know as well, in the comments section of this Facebook video is the website for Cardinal House Sober Living and for Brazos Recovery. So if anybody wants more information about either of those programs, if you're watching this on YouTube, go to our Facebook page at Parents Helping Parents Inc. Go to the video section. In the comment section, you can find the website and contact information for both those programs. So, Josh, let me see which question I want to start with. You went to treatment more than once. At least that's what I heard in your story, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like families out there ask this question, or want to ask this question, but don't know if it's okay to ask this question. So I'm going to ask it for them. Is going to treatment more than once pretty normal?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. And I can speak to that. At one point, I had this kind of cynical, closed-minded idea, right? And like I said, I went to Burning Tree, and they are for the chronic relapser. Multiple treatment centers is like a prerequisite for going to that place. And anyways, I went through with a guy who today is one of my best friends, and we were talking pretty soon after we got out. And I was like, man, if only, you know, this place or that place would have said this or that different and all that stuff. And he stopped me, and he's like, hey, is it possible that like you didn't really know how bad it was for you until you went to those places, to those multiple places? And it's like, do we want to find out a way to stop costing so much money for somebody to discover that truth and that desperation? Of course, absolutely. But for me, I know what had to happen only because of what did happen. And that was part of it.
Yeah. You talked about Burning Tree being long-term. You also talked about Brazos being pretty long-term. What does that mean? How long is long-term treatment?
90 days.
90
Burning
days.
Tree is kind of a year-long inpatient. I don't know how they break it down. I know you can get through it, the inpatient portion, quicker than that, or longer than that, or whatever. But Burning Tree, year-long inpatient. Then they have a pretty extensive aftercare program that isn't necessarily optional. And then Brazos, same thing, right? Detox, residential treatment, PHP, IOP. And like, if we can get everybody to do what we find to be most effective, then we've got a guy there for at least 90 days out at the facility.
Okay.
And then we're working with aftercare providers as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned being involved in a family program. How important is having a family component to treatment in terms of somebody's success?
I think it's not necessarily optional. Of course, I've gotten to work with guys who are much older and who have families that are like, hey, this bridge is burnt, friend.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever there is cooperation and there's trust put into a treatment team, I think having the family there it's necessary. Like, incredible things happen when everybody can meet on the same page and put trust in some people with some experience and just listen. Because like I said, a lot of us as treatment professionals are telling people to do something that they've spent years doing the opposite of, and it doesn't just change overnight. But I think it's crucial.
If you had like 60 seconds in an elevator with a family who had a son or daughter, any age, maybe young adult, who was really wrapped up in an addiction or substance abuse, what message would you want to give them in that 60 seconds?
I hope that I could do it articulately, but I would tell them that A, it's not their fault. B, it's not an indication of their love or their child's love for them. And C, that there's nothing that they can do to fix it for that person, their kid. And that's it. I mean, just
all three of those are home runs. So
yeah.
I mean, we could do hour lectures on each one of those or more,
Yeah.
Man, good stuff. Hey, I really want to honor your time. I know that you had some other obligations tonight and you kind of stepped in at the last minute to fill a gap because we had a cancellation, but man, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you can think of that you might want to share before we kind of wrap up?
Yeah, I think like with this group and like my experience as it is relevant to this group, like I got sober at 22, and the circumstances of that are, me calling mom saying, hey, I need help. And I'm not interested in telling you what it's supposed to look like. I'm not interested in deciding what it's supposed to look like. And the truth is, I showed up to treatment completely convinced that there was probably nothing that was ever going to keep me from putting a needle back in my arm. Right. And when I tell you the healing that's happened in my family is like, I did not even know what it meant to be a son. I didn't know what it meant to admire and to forgive and to love the people in my family. And it wasn't about, I never woke up with ill intent, but I could not comprehend anything other than, what can you do for me? And like, that sounds so tragic, but it's so far from the way it is now. So it's so completely far from that. And I just want everybody to believe that. I want to give everybody hope that that's possible for every single person. So,
man, speechless. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Oh no, and I hope that this comes across as honest, but like you seem like one of the most just sincere people that I've had the pleasure of encountering in the recovery community. Just
thank you.
The authenticity behind what you're saying really comes through, and I think what that speaks to is the actual change that you've experienced in your recovery. Right? Is that like, I don't think anybody that can hear you talk about it could ever say like, nah, I think he's making that up. Like it just feels like real and authentic in you. And that's like a really beautiful thing to hear.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us. Josh, I'd love to have you back sometime.
Yeah, I would love that.
In the future, we'll do a little bit longer when maybe we'll pull in a couple other people and just do a big discussion and have a really good time. So for people that are watching, thanks for joining us. Have a really good rest of your holiday. Watch those fingers. And we'll see you guys here in 2 weeks for another Parents Helping Parents Live.
Awesome. Thanks, man.